Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. This is Erik and Derek, Tiger Football Talk. We're just two Clemson grads who love nothing more than to spend a few extra hours each week talking about some Clemson football. We're here to break down really the game of the year so far. Number 1 Clemson versus number 4 Notre Dame. This is ESPN College Game Day Game of the Week. Erik, before we get into the details of the game, just break it down for us a little bit as far as what your initial thoughts are.
Yeah, College Game Day of the Week, 1v4, 7:30 night game in South Bend on NBC. I'm almost kind of nervous to talk about this game. I'm kind of afraid to throw out my thoughts on what's going to happen. I don't want to jinx it. It's going to be a tough matchup. Obviously, it's number 1 versus number 4. They're ranked that high for a reason. I do feel like coming off of a tough game for Clemson, we typically rebound. Night games, big marquee matchup games, we're always kind of ready. Dabo and Brent got the players coached up. They're amped, ready to go. I think our defense is going to come out flying. I think DJ is going to put up some yards, and I think we're going to come out with a W.
Oh, okay. We're jumping straight into it. You think you're
right
going to come out with a W?
Let's
okay,
go.
All right. It's just like Notre Dame. It just makes me happy to see this game. I know we're going to get into all the details of it, but this is what the ACC needs. The ACC needs Notre Dame because it needs parity in its league. It needs top 5 matchups, but they have to live up to its billing. Which even the Alabama-Georgia matchup didn't live up to that because Alabama pulled away in the second half. This is what the league needs. It needs marquee matchups where it's not Clemson struggling against an unknown team and everyone just putting it all on Clemson saying that they just didn't show up well. This is a great game for the ACC. This is the best game of the year, I believe, to date for any division, for any conference. It's exciting. All I can think about is the 2015 game where you and I were both there for a little bit where I had waterproof boots this is a hurricane game. I had waterproof boots that the sole fell off. This was a crazy game that's every Clemson fan remembers where they were when this game happened. It was just that remarkable. And then the next time we play them, it's on the road to a national championship where again nobody gave Notre Dame any credit because we beat them 38-3, and then or 31-3, either one, and we go on and crush Alabama. And so the last 2 times we played this team, it was a monumental game. I don't think this week is going to be any different. I think we're in for a fantastic game this week.
Yeah, look, we're both undefeated coming into this game. Notre Dame's 29-3 over the last 32 games. They're undefeated against top 10 opponents at home. 1-0, but still undefeated.
Yep. Well, cherry picking stats at that point.
Yeah, cherry picking, of course. Notre Dame has a 22-game home winning streak. We have a 15-game away winning streak. Something's got to break here, and it's going to be a marquee matchup. I think I'm curious to see how it goes. We talk about it every week that it's momentum based. I'm curious to see how Clemson comes out. I'm curious to see how Notre Dame comes out. Defensively, Notre Dame has one of the best pass defenses in the league, and it's only allowed 2 touchdown passes so far this year. That's crazy, and they've only given up 260 yards to any team this season. So our offense is going to have to put up some big numbers to beat that. Clemson on defense, we've struggled the past 2 weeks. We're dealing with injuries, and again, Skalski's out this week. Mike Jones is out this week. Tyler Davis is still out. Xavier Thomas is out the first half of the game due to a targeting call last week against Boston College. I know. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but I still kind of believe in Brent Venables. I think he's going to go back to that 3-3-5. I think we're going to find ways to get pressure and fill those gaps. Jake Venables and Spector are going to need to step up, but it's going to be a good game for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And, Brian Kelly gets a lot of flack because, has he won the marquee game? Brian Kelly's done a great job of turning around Notre Dame. We talked about that 1-0 stat against, top teams at home. And the reason why I said it's chirping is hey, that's an important stat. But the other stat, Notre Dame since 2000 has played top 5 teams 19 times. How many wins do you think they have out of those games?
Oh, somewhere around 5 maybe?
That's a great guess. They would like to have 5.
Oh.
1.
Oh my God.
They have 1 win against top 5 teams since 2000. Now, again, a lot of that's before Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly's done a great job changing the program around, but he's had some opportunities against top 5 teams, has not gotten there. this is as good a shot as any. Not necessarily to take anything away from Notre Dame, but like Clemson is hurting a little bit. Notre Dame's talented across the board. This should be a competitive matchup. If Notre Dame's ever going to win one, this is it. If you're a Notre Dame fan, I think you're a little upset that you saw Trevor Lawrence not going to be able to play, because now you feel like it's a lose-lose situation for Notre Dame. If they come out and beat Clemson, then it's just because they didn't have Trevor Lawrence. But if they come out and lose to Clemson, you couldn't even beat Clemson without Trevor Lawrence. So, and I mean, again, not just Trevor Lawrence, it's Skalski, it's that list, the litany of players that you have mentioned that are going to be out for this game. So this game, to me, means more for Notre Dame than it does for Clemson. We know Dabo Swinney can win the big games. We know Dabo Swinney can win national championships. But this year, for Notre Dame to get to national championship, it goes through Clemson. Most likely twice, as long as these teams continue to play the way that they are playing. But you got to win the first one. And again, if Clemson loses this weekend, and we run the rest of the schedule, when we beat Notre Dame at the end, I think most people would say that we would get into the college football playoff. If Notre Dame loses this week to a Trevor Lawrence-less team, again, -5 players on defense, there might be on the outside looking in. And this has implications as far as, does the ACC get 2 teams into the college football playoff this year? Georgia still hasn't figured out their quarterback situation. Like there's a lot of teams out there, but it's gonna be interesting to see.
Oh, for sure. And you talk about the injuries that we're dealing with. But again, it's Clemson and it's next man up, and there's Dabo and Brent. No one has excuses. And you talk about, Trevor's out. Oh, poor Clemson. DJ Uyunglele comes in last week, nice. 30 for 41, 342 yards, 2 touchdowns, plus 25 yards on the ground, then a touchdown. Like, oh no, poor us. 5-star recruit out of oh man, we're going to be struggling so much. I mean, yes, he's a true freshman. He's going to be on the road for the first time against a stout defense. It's gonna be a night game. It's gonna be a new matchup for him, and we have no idea how he's gonna play. Clemson's gonna have to rely heavily on ETN again. I mean, he's averaging almost 80 yards a game, 6 yards a carry. Our O-line's still struggling. I really hope Tony Elliott either finds a way to scheme out of that, screen passes, tunnel screens, something, just to get the defense to not be loading the box. Or maybe DJ just has a really good week. Good news for Clemson. Frank Ladson coming back from that hip injury. He should be good to go. Nagata expected to return, have more play, expanded role in the offense. Still dealing with that core injury, but Dabo seems to feel like he's on the mend. So, and then Notre Dame wise, offensively, Ian Book, he's been consistent. They're very injured in their offensive weapons as well, and I'm curious to see how much he can spread the ball around. If we're going to load the box and kind of bring 6 defenders and just blitz them every time and stop the run and make Ian Book beat us with his arm, and maybe he can. I mean, I think he's an above average quarterback for sure, but I need to see it happen, right? Especially in prime time.
Right. I mean, he hasn't been chicken or the egg. He hasn't been forced this year to throw the ball downfield very much. But listen, he's averaging 200 yards through the air each week. I mean, this is 2020. This is not 1994. That's a low yardage total. I look on the outside. They lost Chase Claypool to the draft. He's lighting up for the Steelers. I mean, I like, honestly, if we're talking about offense, I like Zay Flowers last week from Boston College against any of these wide receivers. I think he's more talented. Phil Jurkovec
for that matter, right?
Right. You're talking about, I don't know how he did not beat out Ian Book, and maybe that's credit to Ian Book, but I think Phil has a better arm. I think he's more mobile. I thought he looked great. So I think there's some offensive weapons we came up against last week. I'm looking at Notre Dame. I'm like, they have tight ends. They have a great offensive line, great defense. But I'm like, are we really scared on the defensive side? They have a great third down offense, but it's because they run the ball. And I mean, the amount of times they're set up with 3rd and 3. So in order for us to get them off the field, we're going to have to win on first down. And I don't know if that is them just going and lining up and running the ball and can you stop us? That's probably what they're going to test out in the first quarter. Is they're going to see like how well can you stop the run.
Yeah, and I think you talk about our D-line. And we got Brissett, obviously Miles Murphy. I mean, these are big guys. Niles Pinckney. I mean, Niles Pinckney's obviously our big run stopper. I know he's like third on the depth chart in defensive tackle, but he gets his playing time when he needs to. I'm curious to see how Brissett and Miles Murphy step up on the run stop. I mean, they're really, really good at getting pressure on the quarterback and kind of going around or doing swim moves on their tackles that are guarding them. But we need them to be able to close these holes, especially against this O-line, like you said. I mean, this is an elite O-line, probably the best O-line that we'll face all year, maybe going into the playoffs. And Notre Dame, I mean, running back by committee, really. I mean, Kyron Williams and Flemster, they've been averaging almost 6 yards a carry as well. I mean, I think in the last few games, they've both had 80-plus yards. So they're definitely trying to run it down your throat, get those third and shorts, and stay on the field. And the other question I have is time of possession. If for some reason our offense is struggling to get points, can our defense stop Notre Dame? I mean, that's how Boston College stayed in that game that long last week, was just time of possession. Those drives just took 8 minutes, and we were behind, and we're like, we need to get our offense back on the field. I'm hoping that our defense can step up this week and stop Notre Dame from going on those long drives.
I agree. I mean, I think when you're talking about that rushing attack, I mean, Kyron Williams, they have some talented backfields, but it's that offensive line. Like, I don't necessarily believe, even though Kyron Williams is just a sophomore, I don't think he's going to be a first-round pick. He could definitely go play in the NFL, but that line is just fantastic. And, Kyron Williams he didn't come out of nowhere, but last year he was a freshman, didn't really contribute to the team, comes out, wins the starting nod over spring, and has done well this year by all means. I think it's kind of similar to like the Dallas Cowboys situation a few years ago with Ezekiel Elliott back there. It's like, well, yeah, if you're running the ball 3 yards before you even get touched, like you're going to have a really good average. Now, Brian Brzee and Miles Murphy are two studs on the defensive line. Power Football Focus has rated them, 2 of the top 5 defensive freshmen in the entire country as far as their play. They've been outstanding. Brzee, finished the game for us last week with a safety. Miles Murphy has been, living in the backfield, sacks and quarterback pressures and getting some, forced fumbles as well. I want to go back to Travis Etienne a little bit just because we're talking about defenses. Brian Kelly's talked about we got to stop number 9. It's the same thing that Boston College did, but Boston College goes out there and throws a linebacker on him on every play, and he's always late getting out there. And then when Travis Etienne goes out as a wide receiver, they pull a linebacker over to cover him. It's just not going to work. The safety for Notre Dame, Kyle Hamilton, he's a high 4-star, almost a 5-star. I wonder if they're going to do some sort of shadow where they just bring that safety into the box, say, hey, we're going to do some aggressive coverage. Can you beat us over the top? And then that safety, Kyle Hamilton, just follows and is like, hey, I got number 9. I'm going to try and take Travis Etienne out of the game. Because all these teams have to figure out a different way to game plan for him because he is killing people out of the backfield. His yards after catch is higher than anybody else in the league, and it's not even close.
I think it's amazing that a few years ago, Etienne had the nickname Stone Hands because he couldn't catch the ball. And now he's a legit slot receiver, hands guy. But I agree with you. I mean, it's definitely a mismatch. It's always a mismatch in the league with a running back versus a linebacker, especially the way that we've been utilizing him, kind of letting him motion out and then kind of been running these go routes. It'll be interesting to see if we continue to use him that way. My thought is if you get Etienne the ball in space, he's like Alvin Kamara. He's going to make people miss, and he's going to get his yards. So the game plan needs to be get Etienne the ball in space. And I don't care if there's a safety guarding him or a linebacker guarding him. He can make that first guy miss, and he can run people over. So as long as we can get him open, we'll be good to go.
Right, and the reason they've been throwing him the ball is to get him in space because behind the offensive line, he's just not finding any. I don't want to spend every week and every video talking to the offensive line. Listen, they're doing zone blocking. They have the talent. It just doesn't seem to be working. And I don't understand. You can't switch from zone to man-to-man halfway through the season. It's not going to work. So unless there's just some small little things that you can do throughout the year to build on it, I'm not the coach. I don't have great ideas and suggestions on how to do that, but I think the fact that Travis Etienne has emerged so much as a receiving threat over the last 3 games, the same time that we've struggled running the ball, I think that's the adjustment that essentially we've made on offense. Is listen, we're not going to run the ball. We can pass protect pretty well, which I will say Notre Dame has, I wouldn't necessarily maybe say first round talent, but maybe second round talent on their defensive side of the ball. Number 9 is fantastic for him, Dalen Hayes. He's not going to be matched up against Jackson Carman. So that would have loved to have seen that. He's going to be on the opposite side. But again, our offensive line struggles. I think we'll be fine in pass protection. But like you say, we got to find ways to get him in space, because just lining up and running the ball, that's just not a game plan that's going to work for us, because it hasn't worked for us since the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I mean, we could spend hours talking about our zone offensive blocking and how that's the most basic blocking scheme in football. And for some reason, for the last 9, 10, 12 years, we've been running that scheme is baffling to me when we have the talent that we have. But again, I could spend an entire hour talking about our zone blocking on offense.
And we finally have the talent now. That's something that, listen, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, we didn't have the talent. You just had to figure out ways. That's why we did tempo. You had to manufacture advantages over the competition. It's like, if we just lined up and played with Alabama, we were going to get our butt kicked on the offensive line. And so, but now we have the talent. Now we have the guys. Now we have 4 stars across the line. And I don't know when you make the switch. It's been, I don't know. Maybe it's just a one-off year, but I like the fact that they've adapted towards getting him, opportunities in space. That's a good improvement to be able to see. One thing I really want to talk about, as you mentioned this earlier, is going to be the third down defense. Both of these teams are, top 15 in third down defense. Both of these teams are also top 15 in third down offense. This is one of the situations that's going to be strength against strength. Which one wins? I'm under the belief that the reason, again, I mentioned this earlier, their third down offense is so great because they run, they have short third downs. Clemson's not that way. How many times was DJ at 3rd and 13, 3rd and 8 last week?
He don't care.
Slings it for a 17-yard gain. It happens so many times. It's just different. If we're in 3rd and 10 consistently, and Ian Book is 3rd and 10 consistently, listen, they're not going to get that. But we have an opportunity to. That's why I think for the game script for this, I think Notre Dame only has one way of winning it. It's they have to get time of possession, like you talked about. They have to run the ball, be dominant, have over 200 yards on the ground. Ian Book has to be manageable. I don't see a world where Ian Book throws for 300 yards against our defense. I think Clemson can win this game in more flexible ways than Notre Dame. Notre Dame has a one-track mind.
Yeah. Look, last time Clemson played Notre Dame, college football playoffs, December of 2018. Clemson went in there and won 30-3. So, Derek, what are your game predictions for this Saturday's game?
Okay, well, let's do it like we did last week against Boston College. The spread is 5.5. It still has Clemson favored. So we're favored by 5.5. The over/under is 52, which gives it an implied score of about 28-23. So they're saying a mid-20s game. I think this is gonna be an ugly game, depending on how it starts. But I think each team is going to rely on their defense. I think each team is going to be a little conservative. I think each team is going to, when they get to a 4th and 1 situation, 4th and 2. Because they want to rely on their defense, I think they're going to be kicking field goals instead of going for it on touchdowns. So I think that implied score of 28-23 is actually pretty similar to what I was going to say. I think I was going to say 27-23, like an ugly kind of score like that. But because I need to make it, I guess, a little bit different, I'm going to say, I don't want to go over though. Yeah, I'm going to say 27-23, be very similar to the implied score, and then say we go under on that. And there 27-23 means we don't cover the spread either. So what are your thoughts?
I'm going to preface this by saying that I was wrong last week. Very, very wrong when I called it.
Who was right? Who was right last week?
47-10. I think you were right in terms of the spread. I don't think either of us got the score right.
No, we did not.
This week, look, last year we had a close game against UNC. Right? We stuffed them on a 2-point conversion to win the game. We would have lost that game. The game after, we beat Florida State by 41. 2 years ago, close call against Syracuse. Next game after that, we beat Wake Forest by 60.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't want to jinx it. But I do feel like if Clemson comes out hot, plays our game, fixes some of the mistakes that we have had over the past couple games. I truly believe that Brent Venables is amazing at coming up with designs and schemes to stop other teams. I think he goes back to the 3-3-5. I think we come out, I think we load the box, and we make Ian Book beat us with his arm. Offensively, I think we just keep churning like we've been churning. I hope Tony Elliott's play calling opens the book a little bit more for DJ. I see this game as more of like a 42-17 game. I think they get the over. I think that we get the spread.
So you think we're gonna be able to put up 42 points against Notre Dame at Notre Dame? There's no crowd. Okay.
Yes. I do. I think Notre Dame is ranked 4. I think they deserve number 4, but I also don't believe that they've played anybody yet, so I don't really know how good they truly are. And seeing them only put up 12 against Louisville makes me kind of have my hesitations to see how good Notre Dame actually is.
You know, for a second, I had actually forgotten about that game. So
I'll remind you.
They did do that, didn't they?
Yeah, they did that.
Yeah. This is one of those games where they should not be able to outscore us just because their offense is not dynamic. If you're telling me the winning score is 30-13, I would say there's 0% chance that Notre Dame is scoring 30 points in this game. I would say that that's obviously us winning that. So, okay. So you say that you're taking the over
and we cover.
Okay, so I believe you said the same things last week, so we'll see if it changes.
Apparently, I don't believe in Vegas odd makers, even though they get paid big bucks to make these calls.
Okay, that works. A couple things before we head out. I'm not sure we mentioned this, but Clemson's offense has scored more touchdowns than anyone else in the country, and Notre Dame does have the number 1 scoring defense. That's the number 1 scoring defense that Erik thinks that we're going to put up 40 points against. So again, we'll see how that goes. And then Notre Dame has a 22-game home winning streak, and Clemson has a 15-game road winning streak. So we talked about third down defense, third down offense. This is a battle of strengths coming to a head. It's going to be very simple to figure out, I think, within the first quarter, which one of these strengths is wearing on the other. Again, I'm trying to think. Erik, do you got anything else for us before we head out?
I think, there's not a ton of great games on this weekend, so make sure you tune in. Other good game this weekend would be Georgia versus Florida, 5 versus 8. Curious to see if Georgia can fix their quarterback play. I don't know if Stanton's going to do it for them this year, but that'll be the other marquee matchup of the weekend.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see Kyle Trask against that Georgia defense. That's going to be a great tailgate party. And then one thing I do want to bring up is Virginia Tech plays Liberty. And if I were to tell you there's a ranked team playing in this one, you would probably assume that Virginia Tech. No, Liberty is the team that's ranked. And Liberty crushed Syracuse a few weeks ago. So that's an interesting one because Virginia Tech is essentially paying Liberty to come in and play them hard, which I think Virginia Tech lost to Liberty a few years ago.
It wouldn't surprise
I want
me.
to say it was either that or Old Dominion or maybe both. I'm not sure. But one of those small teams of Virginia. But yeah, so Liberty is ranked 25th, playing Virginia Tech. That'll be interesting. I mentioned earlier, this is a great game for the ACC because it's Clemson, number 1 versus number 4. That's a bad game for the ACC because you should not be playing a ranked opponent like that. And then BYU versus Boise State, I think is a top 25 showdown. It'll be interesting. Zach Wilson is a great quarterback entering the Heisman race. That game's on Friday, so if you're looking for something to do on a Friday night, that's the one I would say tune into.
Yep. If you like our content, help us out. Like, subscribe, click the button. Every little bit helps. We'll be back at it on Sunday or Monday with our upload on how we feel post-game notes on how the game went.
I love it. Go Tigers, everyone.
Go Tigers.
Have a great weekend.